Oh, wow, 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 wow. Okay, Yellen, that is just insane. That is. Good day everyone, so I hope you're doing really well. I want to discuss Yelan's constellations in this video, as well as some misconceptions about constellations while we're at it, and there'll be some footage more towards the end. So I've activated all of Yelan's constellations. I think it's entirely pointless to go by activate one by one and show you the difference, because that's not really how constellations work. Constellations are all about how they stack with previous constellations and your abilities in order to make your character quite a bit more powerful. So the first constellation is really strong. Lingering Lifeline gains an additional charge. So let's just talk a bit about her E ability. Basically, well, with Constellation 1, you can dash and you can dash again. So there are some two effects right here. First of all, you can generate more like elemental particles, which is like really awesome. It means your elemental burst will have like a higher uptime, assuming the same level of energy recharge. Alternatively, you can interpret this as removing element or energy recharge from your builds and stacking more damage on it. So either way is kind of fine. But the other thing Lingering Lifeline does is it does a lot of damage, and that damage can also crit. So it ups Yelan's damage, it gives you more maneuverability, and this is something a lot of people didn't appreciate with Yaimiko, the ability to have options, the ability to be able to freely move around the battlefield is very important, especially when an enemy hits you and they increase, like the Hydroelectors, and they increase all of your skill cooldowns. Having then this additional option can actually make quite a bit of a difference. And then there's of course like a bit of a hidden effect here, and this is something not a lot of people actually point out, but if you read Depth Clarion Dice, it not only works like a lot of people say, you know, it's like Shingshu's sort of elemental burst, but there's something else here as well where it says your sort of this little dice will attack the enemy when your normal character does, when your active character does normal attacks, but it also activates independently if Yelan's lifeline explodes and hits opponents. So basically, if Yelan is the one that sort of is attacking on the field and she does the normal attacks, or if you're using her E ability, she can also benefit from using the Q with her lifeline. So you can do a quick double tap on the Lingering Lifeline and you can still keep up the coordinated damage. So there's no real damage lost if you put Yelan on the field instead of another character to trigger like the normal attacks and so on. And this is like really powerful. It gives you an additional shot right here, but also remember the Depth Clarion dice, it's got its own internal cooldown, so being able to sort of trigger it with a normal attack and then two quick double taps with the Lingering Lifeline will give you an additional instance of hydro damage. This is really powerful. So Constellation 1 packs in quite a lot of utility. Now Constellation 2 is almost like Kokomi's Constellation 1. Basically your elemental burst will like sort of give you an additional sort of arrow that you can fire whenever you do a coordinated attack, and this does hydro damage. Of course, this thing's got its own separate instance of hydro as far as I'm understanding it, and yeah, it is sort of it can crit as well because it's based off of 14% of Yelan's max HP, but obviously Yelan can crit, so this can add up to by quite a bit. So 14% times, let's say 15 attacks that you can get off during an elemental burst is about 210% of Yelan's max HP that can also crit an additional damage that you're going to do. So if my Yelan's got like 40k HP and I can, let's say, crit about half the time, that'll be about 60k HP. So now you can multiply that by 2.10. So that is what? That's about an extra 150k damage that this thing does. So it really does sort of stack up, but there's something else to this as well. So if you look at this constellation, it triggers whenever you do a coordinated attack. So if you use your Yelan lifeline during her elemental burst, you can also sneak in a few extra one of these in as well. So once again, this sort of idea that the constellations actually sort of do sort of tie in into each other, as well as all of the other skills that Yelan has. But it gets better because Yelan's got this passive ability. adapt with ease, and obviously turn control. If you've got like 4 elemental team members, you'll do more damage via these constellations. But also adapt with ease increases the damage that your own active character deals. So if towards the end, let's say you use Yelan and you trigger the lingering lifeline, since it would have been reset during your elemental burst, you can actually do quite a significant amount of additional damage. And remember, this coordinated attack damage will also then gain the increase by Yelan's sort of uh, passive talent, as far as I'm understanding. So this instance here also goes through the entirety of the Genshin Impact damage equation, like Kokomi's C1. So this is not just something to scoff at, it's a very powerful constellation in dealing a lot of additional damage. So let's just move on to the next one. Constellation 3 here, the Trickster's dice basically increases depth Clarion, so basically your elemental burst is going to hit harder, and it does hit quite a bit harder. I've sort of tested this out. It's a very, very good constellation. It doesn't really affect the functionality, it just increases the power. Now, Constellation 4 is very, very powerful because, once again, it says here you gain an increase in max HP every time your lifeline hits an opponent. But if you've got 2 lifeline, and I've tested this as well, you can sort of double tap it and gain an immediate 20% HP bonus, which means your elemental burst and, of course, the second lifeline is going to do a bit more damage. And, of course, what happens if you can do more damage? Well, your Q does more damage. The coordinated attack from your C2, this extra arrow here, will do more damage. Basically, your breakthrough bob will do more damage. So this constellation doesn't seem like much, but taken together with all of these extra things, as well as Yelan's passive, you're doing more and more damage. All of this really starts stacking up, and this is not something a lot of people mention. They just think, oh, you gain more HP. And by the way, what happens when you give a character lots of HP and the ability to sort of stack a ton of utility on it? Well, the character becomes really insane, because your Yelan can actually now take hits as well. So while she's in Lingering Lifeline, even a very strong 20 or 30k hit or blow to her will not take her out. And this thing can actually, in a certain sense, act as a lifeline to save your Yelan from sort of some certain hits that could be considered as a breakpoint to knocking out your character. So very, very powerful constellation. The Dealer's Sly, basically Lingering Lifeline gains an upgrade. So this upgrade means you will deal more damage on your Lingering Lifeline, and because you've got 2, it means you'll also do a lot more damage. And don't dismiss this, I've really dealt like high amounts of damage with this. I think like 70-80k like per hit here. It is just absolutely insane. And then the final constellation, which just makes Yelan absolutely bonkers. A lot of people say this makes her a main DPS. I don't really think so. This makes her a proper C6 unit. This is this just elevates her to being in the C6 realm. In other words, to be like kind of useful. So just to explain, Kokomi is primarily a character that has a lot of healing and HP and so on, and her final constellation makes her a proper main DPS by increasing her damage amount to be relative to the DPS numbers that you'll see from 5-star characters at C1, C0. But Yelan here, this just gives you a lot of damage that you can now distribute in any sort of way. So basically, you gain 5 arrows that deal an increased charge attack on the breakthrough bob, and this is like, once you guys see this, you'll see how ridiculous this is, because the cool thing about this is it also it's sort of dependent on your HP, but if you sort of time it well with the adaptive ease damage ramp, basically Yelan can in 1 second, or like in that 1.5 or whatever second window, deal an insane amount of damage from this constellation. So this is not about making her a main DPS, it's about sort of extending her DPS, it's about giving you an additional instance of DPS when you really want it. And you can distribute this however you want. It lasts for like 20 seconds. So you can fire 1 arrow off, and then you can fire it later off. You can fire all of them later off. There's so much flexibility in this, and it really, it's just a bonkers constellation. Remember, all of your damages is now considered breakthrough bob damage, so you can very easily hit like 300k with this, just off the rip, and you'll see it. It's just insane. And remember, this together with, let's say, something like Viridescent Venom set shredding the enemy's resistance, Kazuha giving you more hydro damage bonus, it's just look, this character can do some serious damage. And yeah, that has been the Yelan's Constellation review. Don't underestimate this lady. It's like I said, Kokomi is the defensive side of the coin, and Yelan is absolutely the offensive side. And when you pair these two together, you have like the ultimate juggernaut of a team that cannot die, because this character's HP sort of Constellation 4 obviously benefits Kokomi quite a bit as well. And Kokomi can essentially, well, keep Yelan alive. She gives all the roll compression that comes from healing and stacking HP. She also gives to Yelan, look, their max HPs are pretty much the same. So the one gives the offense, the other one gives the defense. And yeah, I'm just so happy about with my two Hydro ladies. They're absolutely insane. So here are a couple of clips as to what her Constellation 6 does, and hopefully you guys can enjoy it. Cheers.
ご助力を超拡散形態1個先
裁きはすでに下りました。
海のちぎりよやっ行きましょうせいはっはっへい
裁きはすでに下りました。
捕まえろせいソーランの憩い安全距離
チョック。
超拡散形態
どの目が出る
あれ狂いなさいせいはっはっはっふっとちはっはっ
呪言律令チョック。
6308式ユニット安全距離確認7号式モジュール
糸よ工作せえ。有限なるライフ律令呪言律令。
深海のカゴやっへいはっはっはっふっご安心を6308
チョック。痛がっちゃいない。どの目が出るか振動の権限呪言チョック。
海のちぎりよはっせいはっふっへい
はっ急がなく。律令チョック。
行きましょう6308式ユニット
呪言律令。痛がっちゃいない。
安全距離確認吸引テスト開始
有限なるライフ呪言リターン。